of the morning to you. This little guy found his way into the shop. He flew into the window, so he's a little shell-shocked, but I think he's gonna be okay. Hey folks, welcome back to the shop. In this episode, I'm going to answer questions for Steve in the UK about the Dinghy and give you a little bit of the backstory on my wooden boat building days. Then I'm going to give you a tour of another one of my boats, this one, a sailing canoe. And then from there, I'm going to show you how these boats all started, how they're built, and what's in store for the future of Unplugged Boat Shop. Come on in. The story begins sometime around 2004 when Carolyn and I were living here and just before Nelson was born. And I took a boat building course put on by the Nova Scotia Boat Builders Association, and it didn't touch too much on wooden boat building or anything traditional. It was more about kind of a recruiting process, really, to have people come into the trade of boat building here on the island, where obviously fishing is still a big part of the economy. So at some point through the boat building course, it was a 6 month course, and at some point during it, I met Ken Fraser, who is a boat builder, and he built traditional clinker style workboats, very similar to that one, except this one is a light version of that. Those boats, these old workboats, were built, they were like tubs. They could hold hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of pounds of fish and that's what their job was. And they would range from 8 feet to 16 feet. And everything in between. They're just big, heavy workboats designed to be pulled up over rocks, to be strung up on the back of another boat as a tender. On and on again. These things were real. They were workboats. But the construction style, and there was just this beauty about them that really sucked me in. And I started, investigating and reading Wooden Boat magazine and getting my hands on as much wooden boat information as I could at the time. And having Ken Fraser 20 minutes from here as a source that I could go check out his boats, check out his boat shop, things like that, talk to him. It was a real privilege, and I was very fortunate to be able to do that with him. So this little Lapse dinghy that's been sitting in the shop now for the past 12 years. When we were living here, when the kids were young, as much as I could, I would put these things in the water. This one's 8 foot long. The main difference in these boats and, say, the work boats, there's the two main differences, not so much the shape or even the building style, but this one here doesn't have ribs, and it's marine plywood and epoxy. All the strakes, all the planks, the sideboards, are all still lapped. They're still beveled one to the next to the next to the next. So in that way, the style is the same. But the workboats they were using around here would have been made out of solid material, not plywood. This one is marine plywood, probably about 6 mil, I believe, if memory serves correct. And all the trimming is mahogany, except the floorboards, which are larch wood, just from down the street. Now this boat actually won an award in 2004 at the Mahone Bay Wooden Boat Show. Here's a shot I found on the internet. Here's 2 shots. One just with it sitting in the yard and one kind of with its little plaque on it. So that was very cool. But this is a fun little boat. Again, no ribs. And I'll talk about how we put them together when we go over there by the Whitehall over there. But it's a great little boat. It, unfortunately, one day in around 2006, while we were living here, the kids were both babies, and the night came and there was a souette, and a souette is French souette, which is French for southeast, and southeast, and it's a wind that ricochets down. And long story short, it's 180 kilometer an hour wind. So this boat was behind the shop. It was picked up that night. I found it down the road, quite a piece in the ditch, which is hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of feet away. And so the in-whale here busted. So this has to be repaired, and it got a little punched in up here, somewhere along the ribs. So, but other than that, and the stem cracked off. Just the top, the masthead here, which, the stem head. So that was just cut off and replaced afterwards. But it's a strong little boat. It got taken down as far as it did. It got swept away by this massive windstorm, and that was only the only damage was that. I thought it would have been destroyed. But they're rugged little boats, and they don't weigh a ton. So they're a nice size for a river, like here in the Marguerite. So moving along to the sailing canoe, and this boat for me, I was just talking to Carolyn outside, her and Piper in the hammock. In our world, we just hiked to Egypt Falls, and here's a shot of Egypt Falls. It's just a beautiful, beautiful little spot tucked away not too far from here in the hills, and it's a nice hike in. It's a tough hike in. Hiking in, it's pretty steep downhill, and coming out is difficult, and it's hot today. But moving on to the sailing canoe, and Carolyn pointed out that I built the Dinghy in 2004, and then this one in 2006, I believe. This is a 12-foot boat, not to be confused with a kayak. It's a canoe. The hull is a canoe, and it has a deck like a kayak. But Henry Rushton made these boats, and Adirondack-style boats, and sailing canoes became incredibly popular for just a very brief time until something else was invented and kind of the market shifted, and that was bicycles. So just before bicycles got really, really popular, sailing canoes were kind of it. And again, this one, not to be confused with a kayak, does have a rudder. You row it, paddle it with a two-handed paddle. It has a well for a mast. You can actually sail this thing if you put a dagger board on it, but we just paddle it. And storage in the back, just a great little boat. Incidentally, that's Nelson's boat, the Dinghy, and this one's Piper's. So this is just a really fun boat, and it represented things to me that I could paddle up the river, take a tent with me, and just looking at old books and some shots of the history of these boats, it just really filled my imagination, and really, that whole desire to be outside on the river, paddling, exploring. Rob Roy, Scottish guy, toured around Europe, following little rivers and brooks and canals in a boat, not very different than this one. If you Google Rob Roy and his boat, double paddle canoe, you'll see what I'm talking about. Neighbors here, their daughter gave me this boat, Boats and Boating in the Adirondacks. And it's just a phenomenal boat and so much history and inspiration. And so this boat was built, and in between the two, there was 4 other boats built. Dinghy style and longer, up to 16 foot. But it's pretty much the same construction style, except every boat I would add more guts to it. and it was the guts that really inspired the hand tools, because by the time I would get the hulls fitted out, all the detail work on these things was spoke shave and rasp and hand planes. You can see here on the front stem I used walnut, and on the top board here over the seam is walnut. The rest is mahogany ply, mahogany gunnels, ring nails, bronze ring nails. In the back, rudder, walnut cross brace, just a through mortise and tenon, walnut rudder. The rigging is all cast bronze. Again, walnut stem, keel, and fitted out inside. Actually, this is kind of cool, is the rudder works with foot pedals, and inside here the 2 foot pedals go back and forth and steer. You paddle and steer with your feet like on a kayak. Crest rail, actually the knees inside are also walnut. Crest rail, I remember bending this. Just a fun project that we'll see some water probably in the next couple of years as the kids get a little older. So this is kind of how it starts. First thing you do is you build a base, a jig for it. And this is just 2x6 or 2x8 construction grade timber. Think of it like building a patio or a deck. And then the boat is built inverted, upside down, around molds, which is basically different slices every foot, representing the inside shape of the boat. This inner stem is attached to the jig. The transom is attached to the jig. The whole keel is built down the tops of the molds, and then start with your strakes. You start with the bottom strake, which I can't remember, and all working your way up to the gunnel, the final strake, the shear strake at the top. So this boat, the hull is pretty much done. You can see the keel here, all solid, epoxied, screwed into place. There's an opening here for a dagger board, and this is a big boat. This is almost 14 feet long, and pretty beamy in the center, midship. Great for a family of 4, like my family. The 4 of us can get in this, although Piper says it'll be me and Carolyn and Nelson, and she'll be in her sailing canoe. And we can easily go for a weekend trip up the river, which is just across the street here. And that's the goal on this one, but the inside still has to be fitted out. So one of these years, probably the summer after next, we'll get this thing done. And if you're still around, I'll still be here, and that's what we'll be doing. A lot of sheep farms here. All these areas were sheep farm, and fishing, of course, and the forest. So when they're clearing for the sheep farm, they had lots of trees. So incidentally, in a nutshell, this is kind of what would happen, and this is where the style of this boat came from. Some people call this a Whitehall style boat. Whitehall is a street in Manhattan, I believe, where these same style boats, but we don't call it, wasn't called a Whitehall style boat here. At any rate, these boats were designed for speed, and what would happen was, as ships would come into the harbor, there were places around in Marguerite Harbor called boarding houses. And a boarding house would be where sailors, people that didn't have work elsewhere, they would live in these boarding houses, and their job was to, when they knew a ship was coming into port, they would jump in their boat and sail out. They would be hired by local merchants, and their job was to jump in their boat, sail out, and meet the ship before it got to harbor. Why? So it would get first crack at selling the wares of whoever hired this runner. So these runners would all be hired by different sellers, different merchants in the community, and they would all get word, okay, there's a ship coming in. So each merchant would send their runners out, and the runners would literally race to get to the ship so they can make the sale first, of course. Buy my stuff, buy my stuff. So these style boats were incredibly fast, and you can obviously sail or row them, and they're really fast rowboats because obviously sometimes there was no wind, so you would be rowing, pulling, and that's what they were called around here, a pulling boat. Steve, that is the short and sweet version, history, whatever you want to call it, of my wooden boat story. The first, midway through, and the future. It's the tradition of wooden boat building here on the island of Cape Breton is an amazing, amazing place to be and to think about. And one day I'll build another boat, not using marine ply or epoxy, but planks sawed by hand, because obviously these were ripped on the bandsaw, and for me, I would love to do an unplugged boat, so it'll be the Unplugged Boat Shop. Hope you enjoyed the tour of the boats in the boat shop. We'll get back to the carving. It's nice to have them out, and it was nice just to kind of look at them again, bring them out. They were in the shed, and I kind of took all the building materials that was here and put it in the shed where it belongs and brought the boat back in. So thanks for the nudge. And not just Steve, all the people over the last few years that have asked about the boats in the background of the shop. So thanks for the question. Thanks for watching. Enjoy your summer. It's getting close. We're less than 2 weeks. 2 weeks counting down. All right. See you soon. Make every day a masterpiece. Sea salt, sweat, and gasoline. Crow cup sang for nicotine. Copper, he spent Napanee. Pacific notes of redwood tree. Auburn blowing ocean breeze and rolled Atlantic apple trees. 3 birches staggered in a row, not far away from Aspen Grove. We were water painting in the snow. It ain't funny how we grow. A rainy song for rainy day. The season changing in the fray. Then it turns to gray. Still the pipers dance along the strand. We're holding on and holding hand when quiet songs begin the day to share the love and life away with